Someone asked, have I ever used Pythagoras theorem in real life? Pythagoras theorem is basically the shortest distance between two points is a straight line. That's the general idea of it, and we use that constantly. It's just we don't always think about it in the fully mathematical way, but we do use that quite regularly actually. The shortest distance between 2 points. And triangulation, well, anytime you're using a phone, triangulation is by and large how many phones work. I really get boring, boy. The only person I just follow is you. I don't like TikTok. I find big people acting like kids, so here is why I don't follow. Yeah, I could understand that. TikTok is an acquired taste. I could understand that, Mr. Author Malcolm. If you don't like certain things, you would not like TikTok. And as I've said before, I don't generally spend a lot of time consuming TikTok. Nothing off to the consumers of TikTok. You do your thing, but generally me, not a lot of time consuming TikTok. But sometimes if you get caught, it could carry you down a rabbit hole for a couple of hours. All right. So we're live over on YouTube too. And let's get into the stories of the day. What we are talking about today, it's Mindful Live number 25. Look at that, I'm rhyming. Mindful Live 25 on the 26th of January. Tonight is a Wednesday night, Wednesday the 26th of January. Welcome to Mindful Live number 25. And the story that we'd be diving right into, would be the promise of the former commissioner to sue. You're inside interesting. You're inside. Greetings to all. Greetings. Like your videos, bro. Thank you, Aaron Thomas. That's much appreciated. Double G to sue over Stanley report. That's the first story we're getting into tonight. The former commissioner is promising that he's not going to take this whole Stanley report business on the firearm users' licenses. He's not going to just take that lying down. He is promising to sue. Former Police Commissioner Gary Griffith says he intends to pursue legal redress over the Stanley John report. Griffith posted to his social media accounts indicating he had not yet received a copy of the report and would be seeking legal redress for the undertaking of judicial review and to obtain a copy of the said report for further consideration. Now, this report would be an interesting thing to get your hands on. Good night, Auntie Do. Good night, Wendy Medium Excel. Welcome. Glad to have you here. This report would be very interesting because we went through this report, was that last night or night before? They're all melding together sometimes. I'm not sure which night exactly, but we went through at least the parts of the report that were published in the paper. And what we learned is this report has names. This report names names. This report tells names of who within that firearms department, that firearm licensing department inside the police service. The report tells names of senior officers inside there who were engaged in corrupt activities. Now, that's a very handy thing to have your hands on. So I could understand why Mr. Griffith would be very interested in getting his hands on it too. Okay, one moment. Right. Why he would be very interested in getting his hands on it too. He recalled that retired Justice Stanley John, by letter dated September 18th, 2021, had stated, "I wish to reiterate that my remit does not include an investigation into your good self as acting commissioner or as commissioner of police, nor to any police officer." And I remember reading that article. The Justice, good night, S. Jonesy. The justice that, as one of my moderators would like to ensure that my devices are charged. Well, Mr. Moderator, You see, it's a convenient technique that my device just happens to run out of charge at the perfect time to allow me to actually get some sleep. I believe solemnly, if I have a fully charged device and I am willing to, those people over on my TikTok live will keep the live running all night if they have their way. So the battery dying has its benefits. Hey bro, you ain't find the double G rail on Facebook and TikTok? How that man does get time to write some real long articles? When double G writes an article, it has been so long that my throat get dry reading it. Remember, the guy, respectable gentleman, is now no longer employed in, at least not in his previous portfolio. So he would obviously have some more time on his hands. Good night, I believe this is a smoke screen. Also, I put an ex-politician as commissioner of police and expect better. That is that is one of the most important things I always found. Some people seemed so shocked that this former commissioner behaved like he always behaved. This man was a known entity. He was in our politics for quite some time now. He was attempting to reach up in the political arena, and he didn't reach very well. He reached quite far, but he possibly didn't reach as far as he wanted to reach. And then he went over to this commissioner portfolio, and then in that case, you're supposed to expect what is to be expected from such a character. But hey, Empress Roni, welcome in the live. I hope you're not outside of home in some other place watching the live as you usually are. I hope you are home comfortably taking in this live. Yet, he pointed out that a Sunday Express exclusive this week had indicated the report had been completed and submitted to the Police Service Commission, and according to comments made by Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines, also submitted to the National Security Council. You came late, sire, over on IG. Well, you're not that late. You're not that late. And bear in mind also, as per usual, as every night, if you miss pieces of the live and you'd like to take in at least the part that we talk about the news stories and whatever stories of the day we feel like, you can feel free to go over on my YouTube channel, Nathan Springer, over on YouTube, and subscribe to Nathan Springer on YouTube, and you'd find most of the lives there, and you could go see what you missed. They're pretty long. If you'd like to really listen to them all and you haven't been taking them in as they come up, then you'd have quite a long listen. And if you're into that stuff, well, that should be fun for you. Nathan Springer over on YouTube. The statement by Minister Hines confirming the document was submitted to the National Security Council is both alarming and of concern for a number of reasons, including this is Double G speaking here, including Double G, submitted the name of a minister who currently sits on said National Security Council, who has been in receipt of a 5.56 firearm and held same for over a period of 1 year without payment to the dealer. So what Mr. Griffith is revealing here, and listen, when there's falling out among the political ranks and how they see fit to get back at each other is by selling out all of their files, I love it. I really enjoy such things. I have no problem with it. I do not care for all that heightened loyalty among politicians. Be disloyal by all means. When they fire you, tell us all how they thief. Tell us everything. Yes, we understand you're hurt. You're hurt. Come, let us rub your back while you pour out all of your secrets to us, the population. We'd really like to know them. Tell us all. So, Mr. Griffith has informed us that during the process of this investigation by the Justice Stanley John, he gave some information. Now, I find it also very interesting. I would assume the Stanley John investigation. Hi, Sunshine Chick. I would assume the Stanley John investigation would have included Mr. Griffith's allegation. Now, I don't know how many of you in the live currently were also in the live when we read what the Express published from that allegation, from that report, and the Express strangely never published any part about a minister who was in receipt of a 5.56 firearm. We didn't see anything about that in the Express's expose. I found that interesting, just by the way. I found that quite interesting because, and you could say what you want about Mr. Griffith, double G, top G, however you'd like to say it. You could say what you'd like about him, but it does seem like when it comes to this kind of bitter playing of hands, when it comes to that kind of bitterness, he's right up there. That pettiness and bitterness, he's right up there with it. So I wouldn't doubt that he would have purposefully said some things to the justice during his interview just to see what would come back out of the report, because he already knew what his statement was that he gave to the justice. Just by the way. So Justice John, by submitting this report to the same National Security Council upon which this minister sits, has essentially tipped off persons in contravention of Section 51 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. Now, I was making this point about the police officers who were named in this probe, the named police officers in these probes. I was making this point about them because these guys are named out here. And then you release the probe telling them who named them and what exactly they named them doing. What do you think they're going to do with that information? Or they're going to all of a sudden start to be honest and decide, you know what? I really lived a bad life. My life doesn't live up to that point that I have in my mind when I think about a police officer, so I will surrender myself to the law. Was that what we expected when this report came out? Because I didn't. I did not expect that. So what would happen if you give that same report that contains a minister sitting on the National Security Council, you give that report to them? You know what that reminds me of? You know what that reminds me of? In the previous administration, the partnership, there was an incident where they found some suspicious activity going on. I believe it was around it was in the prisons region, something like that, something around the office of the Attorney General. And an employee, a public servant, found this out and wanted to be a whistleblower. So that public servant didn't want to give it directly to the office of the Attorney General because she suspected that it was the Attorney General doing this thing. So she went around and gave it to the Prime Minister. Then Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, woman to woman. It was a woman who was this whistleblower. And she decided, you know what, I really found this out. And I think that our Prime Minister would really benefit from finding this out. So she went to the then Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, told the Prime Minister, hey, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, I suspect there may be some nefarious activities involving your Attorney General. And Mrs. Persad-Bissessar took that allegation and said, okay, I understand. I need to give it to someone to investigate. I'm going to give it to the government's chief legal advisor to investigate those matters. And the government's chief legal advisor is the Attorney General. So poor Tanti went thinking she's going to do the right thing and give some information up there. And the person she gave the information to gave that information right back to the person that she was selling out. And this seems a bit like that, except with even another flavor. So you allowed the members inside of the TTPS to find out what is known about them already. You allowed that minister who sits on the National Security Council to find out what is going on about him also. And then you used both of those things in an attempt to make it seem like what we're doing is really coming to the bottom of this. If you used something that is supposed to be solving crime and bringing about justice in our system, as a manner or a measure to somehow mete out your injustice and your partisan benefit to whoever you want it to be, I think that makes the whole thing all the more worse. And that's kind of what the former commissioner is accusing them of. The act of submitting a report with information directly pertaining to persons sitting on the National Security Council begs the question as to why was the report presented to the National Security Council with full knowledge that it contained information relative to members of the said body. And that is really a good question, because it was not the National Security Council that called on Justice Stanley John to do that report. If my memory serves me correctly, it was the Police Service Commission, an independent body, and the Police Service Commission does not answer to the National Security Council. So you cannot say, well, I gave it to the Police Service Commission and then to the higher ups in the National Security Council. That doesn't make sense. They don't answer to each other. So why give it to the National Security Council if they didn't employ you to do it? Interesting question. Griffith also said Justice John's report highlighted a police constable who made claims that he was approached by senior police officers to engage in acts of corruption. Now, that informant is at risk. This report having made its way to the National Security Council, which was not the body that initially engaged Justice John, then finding its way onto the front pages of the Sunday Express, has now essentially threatened to place the life of said informant at risk. Obviously, yeah, right and hand picked from the same two coins. Yeah, something really, to me, does not add up with what they're saying in this current report. Something really doesn't seem like it's adding up to me. I think Double G is a narcissist. Them people cut from the different, but Double G real hating, and you could see it, he lashing out. As I've said, I have no problem with him hurting and lashing out. If he's hurting and lashing out, then we are all listening ears and we will comfort his hurt. Double G, if you are hurting and you see the need to lash out, that's fine. I have no problem with that, Double G. You lash out, sir. I understand, and I say you are in your right. Lash out and let us know all the bad things they have done to you, Double G. You tell us all of it. And yes, some people may call him a narcissist, and okay, that is your opinion. He may like himself quite a bit, but who doesn't like themselves? Double G, you can like yourself and still let us know all the bad things they did. Please do. Please do. And as I've said, I said this from the initial report, and now Double G is highlighting the very same thing. I find it very strange that they released this report to the public. Well, they didn't release it to the public, but they released it to people who obviously leaked it out there. Double G is just Ian Allen in police uniform. Well, he doesn't wear any police uniform anymore, and I actually wouldn't put them at the same level. They have some great similarities. In certain personality quirks, they have some similarities. They enjoy the limelight a lot. Yes, they do. But I would honestly put their competence levels at different levels. You see, there's an interesting fact that many people seem to have forgotten or seem to have ignored. The fact is that Police Service Commission still selected Gary at the top of the list. And most of the people's problems with Double G weren't really to do with his competence in the role as commissioner. Had little to do with his competence in the role as commissioner. And personally, I cannot reasonably say that we had a better commissioner in recent times than him. I cannot reasonably say that. I don't think any metric would bear that reality out. And then, as I've said, the fact remains the Police Service Commission when they had to select a list to say who was the best, most suitable person to be that commissioner. They put that double G character at the top of the list. So you could say that he likes the limelight. You could accuse him of being a narcissist. But I think his credibility in terms of his competence does have some reality in it. And the man was trained in that kind of national security apparatus business. So I wouldn't critique his credibility per se. The same I may critique some of his personality flaws. And the thing with personality flaws is someone may still be very good at a specific job, although they may not be someone you'd like. We cannot cause a lot of seniors are overlooked and again basically choose who they want. And that's part of the problem that some people are trying to deal with, Mr. Jonathan Charles. The opposition raised a bit of that point. Kamla, did PM Prime Minister sabotage selection of the top cop post? The new Police Service Commission must immediately investigate why the previous commission's merit list for police commissioner was withdrawn in August 2021, and the new commission must publicly give reasons for scrapping that 2021 merit list. Okay, so, brother, you are a very educated person. Keep up the good work. I thank you, Ken Roy. Here's what happened there, and why the opposition leader is trying to resurrect this point a bit. Because there are still some shady things that we don't quite have the full answers for to do with this entire process. But he also used his power and authority, cut corners, etc., etc. So while he wants to put up government for their feelings, they also unearthed his feelings. What are his feelings? That's what we were just speaking about. That bit of the report that we saw, that bit of the report doesn't actually pinpoint Double G himself, the commissioner, as the fault in this process. The fault that the justice attributed to Mr. Griffith was that as commissioner, he tried to undo what was happening and it was woefully inadequate. So the fault to him was that he could not change what was already a corrupt system. So, as I said, there may be some suggestions of abuse of office, but there hasn't been anything concrete that has come out to say, okay, this clear thing is where he abused office. And that is why he keeps on coming out saying that it seems there is some kind of conspiracy being cooked up against him. And I could understand why he says that, because there's this underlying statement, there's this undercurrent where everyone believes, everyone suggests similarly here that he abused his office in some manner. But can we pinpoint exactly where he abused that office legally? Where was that abuse of office? Where was that abuse of office? Is there something specific that can be named? Or was it just an allegation or a suggestion or something with hearsay published in one specific newspaper that really does seem to be gunning for him? And was it just that being the case? Because what the opposition is trying to re-earth here, bring back to the surface, is the fact that there was some suspicious activity that went on. Okay, so there has been a recent FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. There was a request where several documents were released. In the documents, certain bits of the history were what went on with this whole commissioner bacchanal. Certain bits of that history got hammered out and you were able to see what happened. But there are still certain bits that are missing. So here's what we know for sure. Here's what we know for sure. O King JC 67. What we know for sure is that the Prime Minister was not pleased with the Commissioner of Police. There was an incident and then several public statements later, the Prime Minister found that this commissioner was too disrespectful, and it brought his position into disrepute, and the Prime Minister didn't like that. The Prime Minister penned a strongly worded letter to the Police Service Commission. What do you think of the bring war touted to be World War III? Okay, we can talk about that in a bit. The Prime Minister penned a letter to the Police Service Commission telling them and informing them why he thought this man no longer was suitable for that position. But after he penned the letter telling the Police Service Commission his thoughts, after that, the Police Service Commission prepared a merit list. This is a list they sent to the president to tell the president, these are the people and the order of the people we think are best suited to be the police commissioner. And the person at the top of that merit list, after the Prime Minister wrote that letter, still was Gary Griffith. That merit list was sent to the president. Now, exactly what happened directly thereafter isn't clearly known. There have been allegations going on ever since that a senior politician, a senior government official, was at the president's house, and when that merit list arrived, some conversation took place. The president claimed that she did not see the merit list. The Prime Minister claimed he did not see the merit list, but yet the merit list, upon reaching the president's office and the president's house, was taken back. And the members of the Police Service Commission, all of them, except for only the chairman, had no idea what went on with the merit list. So that is some very suspicious activity. Listen, you could say the man is unfit for office, and okay, fine. Well, then the Police Service Commission was supposed to find that he was unfit, and they weren't supposed to put him at the top of their merit list. Taken back, the Lord alone knows where, J-Chris. No one knows where. It was just taken back. It was rescinded. It didn't go through to the president's office. You see, the process is it goes to the president's office. The president then sends it to the parliament, and then the parliament would approve it. The PSC should have sent another copy to the president. Well, here's the problem. The chairman of the PSC was the only person, it seems, who knew what happened to that merit list. It seems like some serious compartmentalization went on. The merit list is the list of merit, the order of merit. Who is at the top of the merit list is the person the Police Service Commission thinks is most suitable to be the Prime Minister. That's what the merit list is. Right. Now, some serious compartmentalization seems like it happened there, because there was so much plausible deniability all around. The only person that everything fell on was the former Police Service Commission chairman. And the chairman just went, Mum, they folded up that commission. She's no longer in office. She's refusing to answer any questions. Nobody knows anything. The other members of the Police Service Commission, there were 5 or 4? 5, I believe. And the other members all wrote letters publicly saying, we don't know what is happening. We would like to know what is happening. We have no idea. The president said she never saw the merit list, and she did not tell the former chairman to rescind the list. She did not tell the chairman that. The Prime Minister says he did not see the merit list either, and he did not tell the chairman to rescind that list either. That the list, the chairman just rescinded the list, and no one knows why. No one knows why, no one knows how. It was just poof, disappeared. And here's my problem. There are proper channels to do things. If you, as I said, if you think Double G if you think Double G wasn't qualified for the job, then that was the job of the Police Service Commission to not recommend him for the job. if the prime minister or someone of the parliamentarians had a problem that they saw was so drastic, this man could not be allowed to take up that office. And as I was suggesting about the rumors that kept circulating, there were articles being written back then that suggested something like this, but they never went into precise detail. It was always innuendo and suggesting that there may be some kind of really, really dark thing that Double G is involved with, and the president and that top government official were just protecting the society without trying to make a public incident about it. Okay, grand, but here's what: I am not your child. My parents are still alive. They're there. I am spoken for in that parental role. You don't have to protect me from that information. Here's what: let's know why this person who was once at the top of the merit list, this person who was once our commissioner, somehow their list must be rescinded in the dark of night by magic trick. Tell us why. And that's what the opposition leader is requesting now. What happened to that list? And now, to make suspicious things more suspicious, the new police service commission that was appointed squashed the list. Now, here's what: I understand from that police service commission's point of view. If I was appointed to a new police service commission and all that bacchanal was holding on to that former list, and all that bacchanal was holding on to that former list, I might have quashed the list too, because you could just say, well, I want nothing to do with that. That was them. I want nothing to do with that. I want nothing to do with that. So they just quashed the list. But still, I think ethically, there's a question to be answered there. This process went through already. The process reached a point. The point was rescinded. The population needs to know why. And here's why we need to know why. Because we need to know if such a thing could easily happen in the future again. Is this how this process generally works? Is this what we are to expect from the process? If some name is on that merit list that someone finds shouldn't be there, there's going to be some meeting underhanded happening in the president's office, and no one is going to see the list that magically then disappears, then that does not make sense. The police commissioner is an extremely powerful position in our country, and there's a lot of vested interest in that position remaining independent. And even the appearance of dependence, of the lack of independence in a position like that, can compromise the efficacy of the entire police service. If people do not see our police service as being an independent body, if people see the police service as just being another convenient arm of the PNM, then people would automatically have less respect for the laws that police service enforces. They wouldn't think that these people are fair arbitrators of the law. They aren't fair enforcers of this law, so people wouldn't take them on. We need that neutrality. So honestly, I actually agree with the opposition leader here. I think we need answers, and I think those answers haven't yet come. We haven't yet seen the answers that we need. If I run for office, do I think that one day I will be corrupted like them? That is such a strange question, Arthur Malcolm. I think I'm not sure how many people would willingly admit that they would be corrupted. I would like to believe I wouldn't be corrupted. But I think, how am I going to put this? I think if you submerge someone underwater for over a certain amount of period of time, they are automatically going to flail their arms. What I mean by that is, I think there are certain situations you put humans in, and there are human reactions to being put in those situations. And I think being put with that much power over that many people is something that would nearly always cause some human reactions that can lead towards the appearance of corruption. Just the fact that you have that much power generally makes it easier for corruption to happen. If I am the leader of a country, if I am appointed leader of a country somehow, or voted leader of a country somehow, just by nature of me knowing some people, if I were to hold as the prime minister of the country, I am now as prime minister going to hold nightly live sessions with my entire country. Good luck with that, but that's what I'm going to do. Nightly lives with my entire country. Now, who do I hire as my moderators? If I already have moderators that if I find they're already doing a good job, I would pull them over from the moderators I currently have. But if I am appointed to rule an entire country and I just pull in the moderators I have over on TikTok, somebody is going to say it's favoritism, it's nepotism, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think I would be corrupt if I were to be leader of a country, but I think that much power leads to some difficult human realities to maneuver. We do not have a culture of accountability and oversight. That is very true, Jason Mohammed. I fully agree with that. We do not have that culture of accountability and oversight here in Trinidad and Tobago. People operate like they don't expect there to be oversight and accountability. If you attempt to have some oversight over some people, they might be offended by it. All right. Let's move on a bit. We're going to get into some more politics. The Beetham waste business, the sewer system down in Beetham, that caused the pile-up traffic last Monday. There are still some more answers being revealed from this entire thing, because this is Trinidad. Corruption is the norm. Whoa, Rascats, what's up? Yes, that bacchanal down in Beetham is still going on. No, it isn't fixed yet, but that isn't the main bacchanal now. The main bacchanal isn't about it being fixed necessarily because it's in the process of being fixed. The main bacchanal now is Gonzales. Sabotage behind Beetham sewer line problem. The Minister of Public Utilities is saying that it was sabotage that caused those sewer lines to leak in the first place. The overflow of raw sewage caused by the collapse of an underground pipeline in Beetham Gardens, which led to fiery protests earlier this month, was caused by sabotage of sewage pumps by elements living in the area. This according to the Public Utilities Minister, Marvin Gonzales. Gonzales and Port of Spain South MP Keith Scotland spoke to reporters following a tour of several sites in John and Sealats, where they viewed completed ongoing and soon to start projects in both areas yesterday. Gonzales said they decided against going to Beetham. Listen to their reason why they decided against going to Beetham. He said they had information that United National Congress elements responsible for stirring up the protest action recently have taken a sip of alcohol and are misbehaving again. For the benefit of the people of Beetham, I will stay away from there so that the workers can do their work in peace and comfort and let the jokers continue to be jokers. Here's what. That sounds very offensive, personally. That sounds kind of offensive. Just the phrasing of it sounds kind of offensive. But here's the reality. The allegations of sabotage for a political reason are not new and are not unheard of. There were incidents, I can't remember how long ago that was, which year that was, but with two specific state-owned assets. One being the Brian Lara Stadium, The other being one of the Tobago ferries. There was a particular point in time when the opposition had a lot of mounted pressure on the government about the Tobago ferries, and they had mounted pressure on the government concerning what the government was doing with the Brian Lara Stadium. And, sorry, and they were saying that the government was mismanaging these resources, and these resources were only shutting down. Hi, Kathleen Love. These things were only shutting down and functioning badly. But then, eventually, some investigations occurred, and they found grapefruits stuck in the toilet systems and big boulders in the toilet systems, in the bins. They found rampant sabotage occurring on both the Tobago Ferry and in the Brian Lara Stadium. And what made the entire thing all the more suspicious was that at the same time these instances of sabotage were occurring, the opposition had a mounted pressure campaign on those same specific resources and assets. Now, that may not necessarily mean 1 + 1 is directly leading there, but it does raise some suspicion. It does raise some suspicion. And I find it completely ridiculous. It is insane if you would allow some political party to chain you up, to risk making a jail for them, one, and to go and mash up your own country's assets. These are things that we're all paying for. What's with this sabotage? Beyond my understanding, apparently. Now, in the case of the Beetham pumps, one of the residents who was a self-professed UNC political activist, she admitted that there was sabotage that occurred on the pumps. But she didn't phrase it as sabotage. What actually happened was those pumps had the diesel stolen from them. People were stealing the diesel from the pumps. And because of that, the pumps couldn't pump out the sewage. And because of that, what's going on in the chat there? And because of that, that is what caused the sewage to back up. So it was not just a matter of government not doing their job. It was someone stealing the diesel. And after they stole the diesel, of course the pumps didn't work after that. So it wasn't just, as I said, it wasn't just the government, it was the diesel being stolen. But here's the thing though. Good night, unknown boy. But no, I didn't talk about the World War III thing. We'd talk about that next. Here's the thing though. Strangely enough, stealing diesel isn't exactly sabotage. The sewage was backing up for weeks because the diesel was stolen some point in time last year, late, coming down to the end of last year. I can't remember the exact date, but because the diesel was stolen, it caused the pumps to not be able to pump it out, and then I believe some kind of malfunction happened. But now they have upped their security around the pumps. So since the security around the pumps have increased, they have been finding less incidents of sewage actually overflowing also. So it could have been just a continuous stealing of the diesel that was causing the pumps to function at lower than the optimum efficacy. All right. World War III. That's apparently what many people have an interest in speaking about. World War III. Why is my chat sticking? Now, to the people that want to speak about World War III, what exactly about World War III are we talking about? Are we speaking about the possibility of the war breaking out on the Russian border with Ukraine? And in that case, I have no idea how that would turn out. I honestly have no idea. I think for the most part that has to do with the USA and what the USA is going to do. Yes, and what the USA is going to do. Why am I not seeing all these chats up to date? Over on my computer, man. If it comes to who are you going and fight, who are you going to fight for, King Kaka? Who are you going to fight for? That's the real question. So, here's part of the problem, right? The North Atlantic something something organization, NATO. That's with basically America and the Europeans, those Western rich nations. They joined together with a military alliance. Well, NATO, that's NATO's fault. The USA can speak for nearly the whole of NATO because they pay for nearly the entirety of NATO. Here's the thing. Many of those European countries don't even have a standing army because they depend on the defenses of their NATO alliance, which depends on the US Army. So when members of NATO try to say, well, who is the United States? Who are they? Who do they think they are to speak for all of us? Well, they think they are the ones who pay the bills. And if they pay the bills, well, we could probably get into how they pay the bills, and that might be a whole other issue. If nuclear warfare comes to be, that will be the end. I highly doubt that nuclear warfare would come about because it's not the first time there has been some saber rattling between the United States and Russia. And before, it was even worse than this. They were much more aggressive towards each other. But back then, they had something known as MAD, M-A-D. Mutually assured destruction. So here's the thing. By the time Russia shoots off nuclear weapons, the United States would recognize and shoot off their own nuclear weapons, and they would both decimate themselves. So it isn't in their benefit to shoot off nuclear weapons. I highly doubt, now who knows, but I highly doubt it's going to become nuclear. Listen, we'll get in that one, Mr. Spectral, we could talk about in the after session. But here's the thing with Ukraine. Ukraine was not a member of NATO. Russia has previously requested of NATO that they do not arm or accumulate arms on Russia's border. NATO now wants Ukraine to join NATO. And when Ukraine joins NATO, what NATO is going to do is accumulate a lot of weapons on the borders of Ukraine and build another base inside of Ukraine, putting more military power right on the border of Russia. Listen. We'll just now, King Kaka, I'll get to that question eventually. Now listen, on the Russian side, that is perfectly understandable. Can you imagine? Now, let's picture. For people who know history, you would know where I'm going with this. But let's imagine. What do you think would happen if Russia were to come to one of the United States neighbors? Let's say an island neighbor, an island that might be more favorable to a country like Russia. Let's say an island like Cuba. What do you think is going to happen if, let's say, in the hypothetical situation that Russia attempts to build a base on Cuba? What do you think is going to happen? Now, here's the one-up on that. For some of you, I'm sure some of you who know history know this already. That happened before. Have you ever heard about the Cuban Missile Crisis? That happened before, and the United States threatened nuclear warfare. They threatened nuclear warfare over the prospect of Russia building a base in Cuba. If Russia attempted to build a base in Canada, if Russia attempted to build a base in Mexico, listen, if Russia attempted to build a base in Trinidad and Tobago, the United States would threaten war. So, how is it unfair now for Russia to really not like the idea of Ukraine building up arms on their border? Now, here's the thing. There is always a humanitarian argument to that. Like King Kaka said, what about letting the Ukrainians choose for themselves? Now, here's the problem with that. Who are the Ukrainians that are going to choose for themselves? When you say the Ukrainians choosing for themselves, you mean the Ukrainian government. And here's what. That government was changed in what some might call a color revolution. The United States sent their ambassadors and functionaries over to the Ukraine, and they did their little works, and they changed the government in Ukraine. The government in Ukraine was once less favorable to the United States and more favorable to Russia. And then all of a sudden there was a revolution. And in case, I don't know how many of you follow American politics, but the instance where Biden publicly in a video admitted to saying, well, he told the Ukrainian president that he needed to fire one particular prosecutor, otherwise America wasn't going to give Ukraine $1 billion in their foreign aid. And he forced the Ukrainian president to fire one of their prosecutors. So it's not just the Ukrainian people choosing for themselves, because America, the United States, has already chosen the Ukrainian government for them. So how do the Ukrainian people choose for themselves? And here's the thing. There would be Ukrainian people who would be more favorable to Russia. And if they are, would you allow them to do that? Now, here's where all of this goes into a much bigger picture. When you go into the history of this geopolitics. Now, the world wasn't always perfectly and beautifully divided into all of these countries with solid borders. I believe the word Ukraine actually means borderland. The Ukraine was what it was once known as in the borderlands. Ukraine wasn't a country per se, it was that mixing pot, borderlands. It was the border of Russia with Eastern Europe, sorry. So, Russia might see it as, listen, this was always a kind of buffering border. Now, you all want to come and make what was once our buffering border into a country of their own. Okay, if you want them to be a country, great, have your national anthem. But then now you want to say they are your allies, and you want to accumulate military weapons on my borders because you made my borderland into a country. Listen, if you could see it from the Russian perspective, it's perfectly understandable. It's perfectly understandable. And I think some of what the Americans are doing are kind of out of place too. And I don't think it has to do with the sovereignty of Ukraine's borders, because some of those in America really don't care about borders, and there are border disputes going on all around the world. All around the world there are border disputes. There are possibly tens of wars occurring at this present moment over some kind of border dispute. So the focus in on Ukraine isn't some kind of just humanitarian thing for the love of these poor people over there. It's politics. It's geopolitics. But you think Putin mad enough to actually invade? Putin might be mad enough to invade. What would cause him to invade or not invade, I think, is what he thinks may be done against him. Now, here's the case. Well, even if he invades, if Russia invades Ukraine, there was this joke I saw. It's a history joke, and I found it so potent. Afghanistan was considered the, what they call it, the grave site of empires. They called Afghanistan the grave site of empires, or something to that effect, Afghanistan. Because I believe the Greek Empire reached all the way nearly to Afghanistan, and when they reached around that region, they crumpled. The Russians reached to Afghanistan, they reached that region, and they crumpled. It's just a very difficult region for empires to conquer. The US went there to try and fight a war, and, well, they lost that war basically. So, they lost a war in the most obvious place. You will lose a war in the graveyard of empires, and now some people are saying that they seem to be sizing up to go fight Russia, invade Russia in the winter. Now, if you know anything about geopolitical history, invading Russia in the winter never works. There are multiple people who have tried it. none have succeeded. It just does not work. Yes, the terrain is the main thing in Afghanistan. So you just came from attempting to win an unwinnable war in Afghanistan, and then you're going to try to rush in Russia in winter. That's just not a good idea. So many people are supposing that the US is not going to do a land invasion. Very likely, even if the Russians do invade, many people suggest that the US may not do a hot war. They very likely won't put boots on the ground to fight the Russians. They may just try and arm the Ukrainians as they usually do, and as usually backfires on them. All year I ready for what, boy? as they usually do, they might try to arm the Ukrainians, and that usually backfires on them, and who knows how that would go. But one of the things they are doing a lot is they're attempting to do economic warfare. And what economic warfare would do, I now noticed over on YouTube, I still have that other article pulled up in my background. And what economic warfare would be tariffs, etc., and imposing levies on them. We would not export such things to you. We will not allow you to export certain things to us. We would not allow you to do this. We would not allow you to do that. But here is the problem. The US dollar right now, those guys over in that federal bank over in the United States, those boys have their money printer going brrrr. The money printers are working overtime over there. So the US dollar is already on kind of unstable ground. So what they do not want is you don't want to encourage Russia to move away from the US dollar. And Russia is already looking at it. And China is already looking at it. And here's the thing. If you encourage through your sanctions, you push Russia and China closer together, they would become the closest of trading partners. They would have accumulated by far the largest landmass of any countries in the world. And if Russia invades Ukraine, and then China says, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to invade Taiwan too. The US cannot possibly try to fend off these two defensive battles on two fronts. One in the south Chinese Ocean, and one in northeastern Europe. Those two just won't go together. So even when it comes to the sanctions, it's limited on what they can do. And then here's the thing, even further on that, this is how the whole thing is tied up in geopolitics. A lot of the European fossil fuels come through Russia, come from Russia, because those guys really focus on their environment. Those guys really focus in on their environment, you know. They're very environmentally conscious. But here's part of the problem with so many people that are environmentally conscious. And let me outline this, and you tell me if this seems coincidental or if something seems just a teeny bit purposeful about how this all works out so conveniently. So, in countries like the United States, first, they open up free trade. So, first, you are able now as a factory, if you wanted to, you could export, you could go to China and get a Chinese factory to do something for you and just import the products into the country, because now you have easy free trade. Grand. That's the first thing they do. Then the second thing they do is lots of environmental policies and laws, environmental restrictions. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. You cannot allow your facility to send out all of these fumes into the environment. There are all of these onerous little requirements that you must meet if you were to own a factory over in the United States or over in Europe. And now what that basically does, the bottom line of what that does is it makes manufacturing anything in those countries extremely expensive. because they care so much about their environment. They have lots of laws to protect their environment. So if you want to run a company here creating anything, by the time you meet all these requirements, whatever good you are going to sell is going to have to be insanely priced for you to make a profit. So what that encourages is, if I am a smart entrepreneur, I wouldn't go and make a company and factory in the United States or in Europe. I would just import it from China. And now that kind of seems purposeful to me. Those two factors, opening free trade and then bringing a whole lot of onerous environmental policies, seems like it's an obvious case of what is going to happen. You're going to export all of your factory work. And here's the thing. That does not help global warming. Don't let anybody convince you with that global warming thing. That does not help global warming. If you have a factory in Trinidad and Tobago that is producing carbon dioxide times 10,000, and you say, I cannot do it in Trinidad and Tobago, so now I carry it over to China, and I have the same factory doing the same thing. It's the same globe. If we're talking about climate change, it's a global issue. And if that pollution is being dispersed on the same globe, it doesn't matter if it's in China or... No, I'm not going Dubai, brother. It doesn't matter if it's in China, and it doesn't matter if it's in the United States. Not Dubai, not Cohen Dubai. And it doesn't matter if it's in the United States. It's the same pollution in the same planet. That's very suspicious. But what that causes is it makes many of those Western countries, those European countries, the United States, they're actually pretty dependent on many of those other countries like China and eventually possibly Russia. So if you do too many policies that push them together and push them away from you, you may lose. So even on the economic war side, there's only so much the United States can do. That's why I am not as confident that we would see World War III breaking out, at least not from that specific case there. All right, we have crossed the hour mark on YouTube. And we spoke about World War III, as some people wanted to. Greetings, fighting for Narnia. Folks on YouTube get no attention. Here's the problem with the folks on YouTube. I do give you all attention. I enjoy you all over on YouTube. But the main problem is the YouTube stream is usually like 2 minutes delayed or something. So the comments generally come in a little delayed. What is your view on corporal punishment for children? I find corporal punishment from the parents is quite fine. I fully understand why in a society you might not want strange adults being teachers doing corporal punishment on your children too. I understand both of those. I, however, think it is insane, like the laws over in the United States, that tell you you cannot physically discipline your child. You cannot do corporal punishment on your child. I think the state, the government, has no authority to tell a parent that. And I find it, here's the strange thing with that corporal punishment. Greetings, Big Mikey. Here's one of the really strange things. A government would tell you that you don't have their permission to hit your child. But then they would send their enforcers of their law with batons to hit your child if they misbehave. If your child is a 25-year-old and is misbehaving in the tongue, a police officer has the permission to crack him a few with a baton. A policeman has the permission to shock him with some large amount of voltage. But no, if your child is misbehaving, no, you do not have the permission to hit them. I find that ridiculous and insane. But there must be disciplinary action in place to replace corporal punishment. Agreed. Well, Shiny Douglas, I don't know if that's a pro or a con. I'm not sure if that's a pro or a con. I feel Trinidad ready. We could bring out the defense force, them thirsty for war. What will happen if the Trinidad drop the need for the USD, but instead the euro or pound? I'm not sure. I'd have to really dig into that and get into the financial frame of mind to really understand that. Jackie Chan got licks in Peking Opera House and became a world-renowned star. No one can tell you how to discipline your own kids. I semi-agree with that. Now, I understand that there is too far and too far is just too far. But I think it's really a touchy thing to have a state tell you what you can and cannot do in disciplining your child. All right. Thank you over on YouTube for tuning in. Thank you on Instagram for tuning in also. It was nice. And today's Wednesday, so I'll see you again tomorrow, Thursday at 9 p.m. for the next Mindful Live. So stay tuned. Peace. Again, as usual, go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nathan Spring on YouTube. If you're over on Instagram and you'd like to see these repeat, you can go subscribe there. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out. Have a good day.